Greetings. Today we will cover the impact of superhero comics on the contemporary morality and moral values of this new generation.
Alright, to begin with, we know that superhero comics have been a part of the culture since a long time, roughly 1938, right? And we have a very famous example, probably the most famous superhero of all time, Superman. Now, Superman has transcended simple entertainment. What does it mean, man? What it simply means is, it has created a place that traditional religious texts used to have. They also convey the same morality that traditional religions would tell you that they convey. For example, the perpetual struggle of good versus evil, the importance of courage in our lives, the weight of sacrifice, and the pursuit of justice. This is the embodiment of Superman and a plethora of other superheroes as well. These narratives are what mold the morality of a young reader. They provide a symbolic moral compass for them to align their lives with. And this helps them to grasp a little about the complexity of the real world.
Speaking of complexities, these values are not just abstract throughout the comics. They are played out in the various struggles that these superheroes face and the various situations they find themselves in. There is reinforcement of virtues by the mechanism of a superhero repeatedly making a choice which is progressively harder for them just so they can stick to their moral compass. It encourages readers, especially younger readers, to stick to their morals no matter what happens. We can look at the example of Spider-Man, the character which has perhaps made the quote famous, with great power comes great responsibility. For young readers who are just grasping the concept of taking up responsibility in their lives, this has been a significant milestone. But it is not all black and white. It is not all textbook morality which we will find in ancient texts or religious texts. It is also something which covers complex moral exploration, which is to say that in the modern world, all of us have a lot of dilemmas which play with what is moral and what is not. There are multiple moral explorations via each superhero. For instance, if we take the dark suit arc of Spider-Man, which explores how morality pans out in different situations for different people.
Now, apart from just talking about morality, we also have to consider a very important topic, that is diversity. The world is evolving extremely fast. We have a plethora of people of different backgrounds, different nationalities, different cultures, different genders. And how do you really get young people, that is the current generation, to be exposed to them? Now, superheroes are a really interesting and really fun way to get them to introduce them to such concepts. For example, probably the most interesting example would be Miss Marvel, who is actually a Muslim Pakistani American teenager. Now, the powers that she has, that is not really relevant to the conversation. But what I would like to talk about is that this superhero tells young kids, especially teenagers, girls, from such backgrounds that they matter, that they have powers, that they are important to the world. They are not invisible to anyone. We have also nuanced ethics. What does this mean? As you mentioned, that it is not black and white. Morality is not good or evil. It is a much more complex scenario. You don't really know who the bad guy is. You just get to make the best decision that you can given what you know. And this is what being a superhero is all about. Not being the best version of yourself, but trying to do the right thing even if you don't know what it means exactly.
Cool. Now that we have seen what exactly is the message that they want to convey and the means in which they convey it, let's look at the impact that it has on younger generations. First up, we have teamwork and service. Take up any superhero franchise, for example, be it Avengers, be it Justice League, be it Spider-Man and Friends, be it Shield, be it any franchise. You'll see that almost every single franchise relies on a group of superheroes banding together to defeat an enemy that they normally would not be able to. This signals a virtue of teamwork and service to younger people, especially when they are probably just going to schools, they are getting exposed to the concept of group projects. This really helps them with the way they engage with their lives, taking inspirations from all these cartoons and comics and movies. Second one is pro-social inspiration. What does it mean? It means that people from a certain social background get to identify themselves if they have a shared identity with one of the superheroes. For instance, the example of Miss Marvel that we saw here plays into the fact that there was a very niche minority of people who did not see themselves in mainstream representation, who did not see themselves in roles where they have power, which trickle down to their social standing itself. When they see people from their background exercising such magnificent divine powers, they also get inspired to at least push harder in their normal lives, even if they don't have the said powers. And lastly, it can be used for educational tools as well. About everything that we have covered so far, It can be used to educate people from various backgrounds, even people who don't have access to formal education, or even people whose formal education does not include all of these things in their curriculum.
Okay, so one really important thing that I think matters is the dark representation of superheroes. Now, what superheroes usually tend to indulge in is violence and moral ambiguity. But that's not really their motive. What I mean by that is, for example, the best scenario that we can take is Batman. We all know that Batman is a very violent person, right? He beats up criminals, he beats up thugs, but he never kills. And I think that strikes a very important morality choice in him, that he chooses never to kill anyone. He actively makes that decision knowing what repercussions it could have. For example, Batman versus Joker. Joker has done terrible things, and yet Batman chooses to spare him every single time, because that is a line he refuses to cross. He upholds such a strict moral code that it seems superhero-like, even though he's a normal human being. He doesn't have superheroes, but just having the strict moral code, having the discipline, that's what Batman teaches us. And that's what I think is really cool, and that's how it shapes the morality of younger people.
To conclude everything that we have covered so far, we have impacts on cultural tools. They revitalize popular cultural values that were, say, dipping out in the modern discourse of, say, family settings or social settings. They also try to provide a realistic picture, that is to say, when you come to this point, we have a lot of things in the modern world, a lot of dilemmas particularly relevant to the modern lifestyle, which are covered alongside traditional cultural tools to embody a holistic way in which people learn morality and moral values as a whole. And lastly, it has contributed to evolving mythologies. A very prominent example of this could be Thor. Thor started off as a Nordic god. And the moment he was featured in Marvel Comics, a lot more people got exposure to Nordic culture, but also people from Nordic culture began reinventing their stories to fit the modern discourse and the modern image of what Thor looks like. Overall, this provides a complete picture capturing the older and newer values, while also making people feel relevant via identity and making people shape their identity in a way in which they can align themselves closer in terms of values to whatever superhero they look up to. That was it. Thank you so much for listening to us.